When I say the words emotionally unavailable, what do you think of? If I had to guess, it's some combination of a guy that won't commit, the forever bachelor, the man that says I like you and then disappears or ghosts, or maybe even the guy that gets into a relationship but then a month later he says, no, this isn't for me, you're not the woman for me. It's a pretty classic presentation, and most women who come to me say this is the type of emotionally unavailable guy I've been attracting. But there is something deeper about emotional unavailability that you need to be hyper aware of, because you could still end up in a committed long-term relationship with a man who is emotionally unavailable. In this video, I'm going to tell you how to avoid that trap, so make sure you listen right to the end. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's dive straight in. Emotional unavailability. Let's have a look at the cliche scenario so we understand what's going on. Man comes to you, takes you on a bunch of dates, things are going very well, and then you start to notice him pulling away. You start to notice distancing behavior. He's not texting as much as he used to. It seems like parts of him are kicking in that weren't there before, parts of him that are distancing himself from you. Often this leads to the end of the relationship and you shrug your shoulders feeling very hurt and say, damn it, how did I attract another emotionally unavailable man? But it's not as simple as the fact that he didn't want to commit to a relationship. What if I was to tell you that there are emotionally unavailable men out there who are very happy to commit to a relationship? And what if I was to tell you that there are men out there with a fear of commitment who are completely emotionally available? It is a thing, and this is why understanding what emotional availability really is the key to this, is what we're going to share in this video. So let's have a look at what's going on for this cliche example. The guy comes to you, he's taken you on a bunch of dates, and then he starts pulling away kind of impulsively without saying anything. Well, he's feeling fear. He's following his emotions. And it's a little ironic that emotionally unavailable men in this cliche example pull away because they're feeling emotions. Therein, emotions aren't the problem. The lack of identification and lack of awareness of the emotions, that's what makes him emotionally unavailable. If we have two guys who have an equal amount of fear of commitment, one of them simply follows his impulses, pulls away, doesn't realize that guilt of not wanting to hurt your feelings, shame around his level of self-worth, disappointment with himself around not being a good enough space in life is driving his behavior. He doesn't speak to that. The other guy realizes that, hang on a minute, I have certain fears here that I need to speak to. I realize that one of my concerns about a relationship is X. Or before I become your boyfriend, one thing I want to talk about is Y. This has always been a fear of mine. Can you see how two guys with the same fear of commitment, for very possibly the same reasons, can have very different levels of emotional availability? And this is why a guy with a fear of commitment can still be emotionally available. While it's not common, emotional availability is possible in this case because the guy is aware of what's going on and he's done the work there and he will speak and communicate with you through it. Now, the opposite example that you might run into is even more important for you to be aware of. This is the guy that goes into a relationship very happily, but is still emotionally unavailable. With this particular guy, he's lost connection to his emotions, but not the ones around commitment. That party's fine. He doesn't have any pre-programmed conditioning from his history, anything like that around being committed to a woman and the problems, quote unquote, it would cause. He doesn't have any of that. He doesn't feel guilty that he's going to let her down. He doesn't feel bad about himself. None of those triggers get brought up. But then, months or years after being with him, you notice how disconnected he is from himself. Maybe he can't show certain positive emotions like affection or longing. Maybe he really struggles to speak your love language. And the worst part is, you only see it the better you get to know him. As in, the closer you guys get, maybe you're deep into the relationship or you're married, these patterns start to come out more and more. This type of emotionally unavailable man is very dangerous because it can be hard to spot him, and often you're already married by the time you figure it out. The key to recognizing someone's patterns is to see them when they're stressed. Not just stressed, it can be stressed, it can be tired, or it can be triggered. You can start to understand or guess what someone's core wound or patterns might be by simply knowing their attachment style. For most people, or most men, women with an avoidant attachment style, you'll be able to say, okay, their core wound is very likely to be some sort of enmeshment or feeling like they lost their autonomy. There's also the possibility that it could be an anxious avoidant attachment style, therefore they fear abandonment. But as you get to know a man, you'll start to recognize, okay, the thing that stresses him out the most, the thing that shuts him down the most, the thing that triggers him the most is blank, and you'll be able to answer that question. It is under those circumstances you'll be able to see a man's true emotional availability, because those are the times where he will find it hardest to connect to himself. This applies for all of us, me included. When we're tired, stressed, or triggered, we go back to our most basic patterns. So if we have an emotions wheel, which we start off as children, in general, our parents, as much as they do their best, will lean us towards certain emotions and lean us away from certain emotions. That means when we grow up as adults, when we are tired, stressed, or triggered, we tend to go back to those emotions we know best. It may be anger. Hey, I always used anger instead of sadness. Maybe it's sadness. I always use sadness instead of anger. Maybe it's guilt. I always feel guilty about myself because that was what worked best and helped me with mum. The point of all this is that you have to see a man's emotional expression when he's under stress, under tension, or when he's triggered. You can't just take it from whether or not he's in a relationship with you. While that can be a sign, as a lot of emotionally unavailable men are unable to handle the fear of commitment, and that's how you know they're emotionally unavailable, there are also men who have no fear of commitment. They're perfectly good with that, but there are other emotions that are unavailable to them relating to their wounds, their past patterns, etc. This is why for all clients, I really encourage you to bring up those difficult conversations, shape the relationship, test it out, throw it against the wall and see if it breaks in the first 6 months. When you know what a man's core wound is, core insecurity, you'll be able to ask questions that frame the future of your relationship around that. A simple example might be, okay, I know that my man's core wound is around loss of self or loss of autonomy. So in the first 6 months of the relationship, let's have a discussion about how he feels towards being committed to one woman for the rest of his life. How does he feel about the concept of putting someone else's needs above your own? And how do you differentiate that from losing your sense of self? Do you put the other person's needs first? What if you don't want to that day? Does that count as losing your sense of self, or does that count as a healthy boundary? If you have these conversations and make the guy think about these particular topics early in the relationship, you'll start to bring that trigger forward. You won't have to wait 3 years until you're married to see it. You'll start to basically put him into his biggest triggers in those early dating months. And he should do the same for you, by the way. This isn't a one-way street. But being able to have those conversations, not only has you see the guy in that state and how he responds, you'll also check in on his self-awareness around it, which is, again, his ability to talk about it, communicate through it, and basically make a plan with you to resolve it. Again, a guy with fear of commitment is perfectly capable of a relationship if he's emotionally available. He'll be able to speak to those fears, he'll be able to work through them with you, and if you are right for each other, you'll be able to set up a plan together as a team so that his fears of commitment are satisfied, are relieved, and then he can be with you and communicate with you through that. So, bottom line here, don't assume that emotional availability is just dependent on relationship status. It is really more of a reflection on a man or a woman's ability to connect with his or her emotions at the time. That ability is most compromised when you're tired, stressed, or triggered. So you need to see your future partner in those states as much as possible. Figure out what their core wounds are and ask questions around organizing the relationship, values, and goals in those types of situations. You know your core wounds. Help your partner, not help your partner understand his, but if you can know your partners and work with him ideally understanding his, then you can work together to say, okay, this is the type of situation that's going to stress you the most. What would be your boundaries and needs in that situation, and vice versa for him? The point of all this is that if you can know what both of your wounds are, and if you can both have self-awareness around this, you can test the emotional availability of someone early and see them when they're tired, stressed, or triggered by asking the right questions and forecasting future relationship situations where those fears and those insecurities would be activated. This will also give you a massive head start on whether or not a man is truly emotionally available. Remember, it's not just dependent on relationship status. It's really his ability to look inside and access the full gamut of emotions, especially when he's under stress, duress, as I say, tired or triggered. So guys, I hope this helps you avoid emotionally unavailable men in the future, or spot them, because it's very rare that all of us are 100% emotionally unavailable. So if you can have these conversations with someone, it's kind of the thing that fixes the thing. These conversations are meta conversations that can give you the tools to fix all the other emotionally unavailable issues in your relationship. So good luck with the conversation. Let me know in the comments if you can relate to this. Have you been with a man who's in a relationship, very committed, but slowly, surely he's losing access to his emotions, especially as you guys get closer and his fears come up even more. Let me know in the comments if you've experienced this. Otherwise, hit the subscribe button with the little bell, give the video a like, and if you want to book a call, you can do so via the link in the description. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.